Welcome everyone to Incredible Display. This is a deck profile series where we highlight some of the cool decks that were a win away from a top cut record. I'm Constantine, Pringlesman123 on Discord, and today I'm joined by Kai Scaife, who got 10th place with his Chaos Allura deck at the Canberra Regional. And I always ask people, hello. And I always ask people, what is it that made you pick this character? Why Allura?
Well, to be honest, Allura wasn't my first pick, but it was the most consistent deck I was able to pull off. My first pick was going to be Beast Titan 1 from Attack on Titan set 1, but I just couldn't get it to be as consistent as I'd like it to be, so Allura ended up stepping up for me and being my next pick.
Mm-hmm. And so, perfect time to follow up with what exactly is this Allura deck doing to win the game? We can see there's only 11 attacks in the deck, so that's some interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah, so the deck revolves around a very interesting concept of being able to play everyone's favorite card, the Falling Titan, an infinite amount of times on one turn. And the premise of the deck is to filter through, get as many cards into your hand and then out of your hand as possible, so that way you end up with Exterminate Mutants and Falling Titan itself. Your opponent basically will always try and be on the attack or defense to try and remove it, but there's so many pieces in here to help kind of keep Falling Titans from being removed from play and in game that it's once it starts, there's no real end for the combo.
Mm-hmm. And so to flesh it out a bit more, what is the combo turn look like? What are the cards in your stage that you need? What do you need from your hand to go infinite?
So to hypothetically say you've got the perfect turn. Turn 1, you'd probably build a couple of horrifying realizations. You'd have an incredible display and a broken psyche out on the board. Just a couple of foundations, so you perfectly built 4 or 5 on your turn. The perfect turn 2 would be something where you have Exterminate Mutants, City Rampage, and a Falling Titan in your hand. In your bin at some point, either through the first form of Exterminate Mutant, you have a Mechazoid, or through one of your checks, you should have a Mechazoid in your bin.
Mm-hmm.
So, starting off on a turn, if you don't have a City Rampage, it's not the end of the world, because you're more than likely going to draw into it, but you have to first form Exterminate Mutants. So there's a very specific line of play with the deck. Exterminate Mutant says, this doesn't count towards progressive difficulty, first form, mill 3. Doesn't sound that great. What you then do is, if you have City Rampage, you immediately follow up with a City Rampage. So that way you check, and all your checks to play Falling Titans get +2. It alleviates a lot of the stress on how the deck will operate, but that's why there's also 11 attacks in the deck, so that there's only 11, theoretically, 3 checks.
Mm-hmm.
You then start off by playing Falling Titans. Falling Titan is a very simple card, just 5 high speed, 6 damage, can turn into a foundation, but other than that, you don't use it for anything else. First enhance, once it goes through, is you're probably going to actually use your Allura ability to remove the City Rampage. We only wanted it for the form, so we get the passive check through the rest of the game, and immediately get yourself a momentum. That momentum will normally be used with Incredible Display to cancel any sealing or any removal effects or any responses to play for the Falling Titans, so that people can't cancel your own bounce back at the end of the turn. Because what will happen is, after you pass, go to the next enhance, you'll immediately build through Exterminate Mutants a Mechazoid from your bin. With that, you'll commit it. They'll commit a foundation. Turn rolls through, you won't do any more enhances past that. Realistically, you're not buffing the damage, you're not causing any major stat changes. And then we move on to the block step. Basically, after the block step's done, you're going to use the response where you sacrifice the Mechazoid, return Falling Titans back to your hand. Response with Mechazoid, you can choose to draw and discard 1 card, and potentially filter yourself into another City Rampage, and you just continue that same loop. So you're constantly playing now Falling Titans on a 6 diff, where you're checking on average 7s, because the foundation count being all 5 checks besides 4 checks. and your attack count being so low with only 11 3-checks in the deck, you're pretty much guaranteed to play through the Falling Titans loop. If you do get to another city rampage and you manage to play it again, there is no chance of failure then on checks. You're constantly checking on a 9 or a 7 either way. And you just continue the same cycle of just playing Falling Titans, burning through the cards in their hands if they try to block. There is no end. You literally just keep playing the one card.
That was a perfect explanation of the whole combo, like basically everything you want to be doing. And I love that you mentioned Incredible Display as well as sort of your protection for, making sure they can't disrupt it with whatever it is they choose to.
Yeah, I found the biggest weakness to this deck was if you're not built to specifically counter it, it is any response either to the responsibility itself or the end of the damage where people use, I'm forgetting the name of the foundation, but it's the 3-diff 5-check one. It came out as one of the championship promos a while ago that just says, remove it. Remove a card from their card pool. Add a card from their stage to their card pool. So people will normally try to remove Falling Titans, or people will normally response on play, try and seal it or flip it. There's a lot of things that happen to try and stop it, which is all response based. There is no enhanced ability that goes into it unless it's Cape of No Return, in which case that's where Pass Through Walls comes in because it just says no to any asset. So yeah, the deck is legitimately built to protect the combo, filters through as much as possible to the combo. And yeah, once it does get started, it's actually terrifying because you don't have any answers unless you specifically built to counter the deck.
Yeah, we don't really have that many infinites going on typically in our gameplay, but as we've seen with some of these turtle cards, here's a perfect example. We got some new ones to play with.
It was definitely fun when they revealed Mechazoid as I am a previous Magic player that's come over through to UVS. I like the idea of backups. They feel like planeswalkers. Mm-hmm. So I always called Beast Titan 1 my Super Friends deck. And this one here, as soon as they revealed Mechazoid, I was super excited because I was like, this breaks the game.
Yeah.
Probably not intentionally, but at the same time, it's just one of those cool combo decks that it can't be run anywhere else. There's no other characters that share Chaos and Void, because you have to have both those symbols to create a safe enough or perfect loop.
Yeah, really taking advantage of Allura's 3 symbols for this. My next question usually, aside from how we're winning the game, would be how you defend with your deck. Because, I like to think that blocking can be even more complicated than our offensive turns because there's so much that goes into it. And
so defending, no, you finished. Sorry.
No, you're good. I was just gonna, point to Allura's response as a sort of premium defensive ability. So I was curious, how your defensive turns would look, what cards you would hold in your hand for defense, how often you'd use her response, and what would you be using it on?
If I never got to go on the play and I was always on the defensive turn, I would pray and hope for either another Filled with Doubt or a 1-away in my hand. Something that I could actually use for Allura herself and to control the game state itself. Most threatening thing to me if I didn't have those control pieces is people being able to string out large combo chains. Going to use Godzilla as an example because Godzilla is actually one of the tougher matchups for her. Someone that plays the Stomping Ground, or I think it's Unfazed, the ones that just say Echo, if you block this, your difficulty, their checks get +1 for the attacks, they get to draw extra cards. Being able to seal and remove most of the effects that allow them to continue onwards and then get +3 to your block mod is actually such a helpful tool that you're able to survive at least 2 rounds of bouts with those style of decks before you have to really start panicking about losing the game. when you don't have Filled with Doubt or Runaway in your hand, I normally will try and keep a high and a mid block. That seems to be where the meta is currently focused at the moment. And that's also where Meeting Hanj kind of fits into the deck, because that way, if I do need to cycle through, potentially draw into more actions, I can. And hopefully use as a last minute effort Genkai's Guidance, which does normally set you on the back foot to remove one of their attacks. But if you can remove the core attack, if you know how most of the decks should function, you're able to pick and choose how to protect yourself. Pony is another good example, which is why I've gotten a sideboard Fortitude of the Armor Titan. Pony likes to string out with chip damage attacks and then go in for a couple of big ones at the end. So being able to say there's no keywords on any of your attacks, so no ally on the core one that you play, and everything has +1 difficulty, means that Pony has a higher chance of failing now and stringing out against you with the chip damage, and you actually are relatively safe, I'd like to think. But realistically, you kind of don't want this deck to go past turn 3. If this deck does go past turn 3, it normally means that both of you are kind of floundering with what you sculpted, how you've blocked, and how you've gotten to this point in the game. And you're more than likely going to start losing pretty badly if you don't play the cards right. Other defensive tools I found work really great, but also help to get the combo is Broken Psyche. While the card is still in rotation, it's literally flip the Scatter Momentum, change this attack damage to 2. Or, on a chip damage attack, you can choose not to take it, remove it from the game, and pick up and Exterminate Mutants from your bin if you've checked one. So you immediately get one card back into your hand for the combo. With that as well, the combo, if you don't have a Falling Titans in your hand, you can then go through, sacrifice a backup on the later turns, filter through your deck, and build a Falling Titans as a foundation. Enhance, add it back to your hand. You've got so many ways to protect yourself so that you can at least try to get your combo off on a later turn. That I found that it's about picking the right attacks to seal and block, not just going straight for the first one, not going straight for the last one. It's, okay, this is the second attack. How impactful is this for my opponent? And then sealing, hopefully, that one, and then removing it from momentum, for progressive difficulty, mitigation, and just the extra control.
Yeah, again, another like succinct explanation. This is no shade to anyone else who's been on here, but this is the stuff I love. Like that, you know everything about your deck, and you got this like almost written out in your mind. It's like, yep, this is how we're doing it. And I wanted to say, at least with the Broken Psyche, how cool it is you get to use the response. Usually that part is like forgotten for the enhance, but being able to also function as a combo piece too is amazing.
It's one of those cards that was severely overlooked, and the fact that you can also play it well committed, which people just neglect. It's great, because if you take 1 point of damage, for example, if I have like a Pass-Through Walls in my bin, but I haven't seen a single Exterminate Mutants, I can just fetch a Pass-Through Walls, potentially block another high block. There's lots of utility with the deck, where the deck functions with every part of itself, not just this fits here because it fits here. It's this fits here for a reason. And without the reason to fit there, I wouldn't include it in the deck, because it needs to be as smooth as possible. And I think that's kind of where I got it down to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect for a combo style deck. And so those were my big broad strokes questions that I'll usually ask. Obviously, there's some other cards in the deck that weren't specifically mentioned by name. So if you wanted to like dive in, talk about any other stuff in the deck.
Yeah, sure. Might as well touch on like the actual attacks I selected to give a bit more of a rundown. But starting off with Resurrected Titans, a lot of people were confused why I was running that in the combo deck. And the first part of it is all I have to do is sacrifice a foundation to find myself a shift attack card and add it to my hand. The next shift attack that I try to play gets -3 difficulty. With how I've selected the attacks, it literally has only one valid target, which is Falling Titan. So it's a way to, all right, I've played Exterminate Mutants, played City Rampage, but the only attack card I had in my hand was Resurrected. I can now play Resurrected, let them seal, remove, do whatever they want to this one, pick up a Falling Titans, potentially now have 2 Mechazoids built out into the field, because as soon as I play the next Falling Titans, I'm going to enhance, build another one from the bin, and start the loop again from that point onwards. The sideboard itself, I won't lie, it was a little bit of I couldn't make up my mind on how I wanted to protect myself or what other tech pieces I needed in the deck. Lover Mode was one of those cards where I found if I couldn't successfully draw discard myself into my opponent because they had multiple ways to cancel adding cards to my hand or stopping interactions of one set of cards set going into my hand and going out, Lover Mode just gave me that one extra bit so that I could. And it sat in the card pool as well as just like a neat little thing to say -1 speed if I had to block with it, or +2 damage for the first lot of Falling Titans before I removed it with my Allura ability. Other decks that had ridiculous control pieces in like sealing. So I did have one instance where a deck was running a full playset of Filled with Doubt, and they were able to seal my Falling Titans. Sideboarding in to Shortcake Admirers and removing Last Second Rescue actually became a really core piece of ensuring that I could get Falling Titans back to my hand, because it didn't care whether or not it was sealed. It was just remove, spend a momentum, add a high attack from my card pool back to hand. It was just other protection pieces to let me go. Scanlan's Hand was something I considered putting main board instead of Genkai's Guidance and having it as a full 3 of going up my actions to 15. But I took myself away from that whole temptation because all it does is commit one non-character card. And then if I chose to, I could spend a momentum to commit their character. So I'd get to pick and choose and say, all right, you've got, a Incredible Display. I'm going to commit your Incredible Display, or I'm going to commit your cape. It was an extra bit of protection, but I found that most times often people only had the one tech piece, not 2 or 3. So having Scanlan's Hand in to help the combo feel a bit more protected just felt redundant, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nonagons was just, I wanted to be more annoying for those decks that were super hard control, maybe didn't have many attacks like myself, and would just constantly either make me discard a card, remove cards from my bin. So Nonagon was just there to seal any attempt of play combo removal that they actually had in response as well. So that way, not only did I have my face or Filled with Doubt, but I had Nonagon just to say, actually, no. So I think that's pretty much it for touching on it. The deck itself, History's Greatest Monster, no shock to that. Most of the cards that you will play to try and get your combo off are 5 checks or higher, or have difficulty 5 or higher. So being able to free re-ready those on Exterminate Mutants, on City Rampage, on Falling Titans, like on any of your attack pieces or core pieces is really helpful. The best this deck actually performed was I was able to get the combo off on 2 foundations.
Oh my god.
I built 2 Mechazoids, a History's Greatest Monster, and a Master's Pride. So I didn't have a great draw after turn 2. And as soon as we went straight through, I drew the God Hand realistically. I had Exterminate Mutants, City Rampage, Falling Titans. I decided, you know what? As long as I check a 5 or 5, I am never failing this, and then I can remove each City Rampage from my bin, from my card pool, without having to worry about ever failing the check again. And I got extremely lucky because I got a 5. I got a 5 and then played Falling Titans, and even though I checked the 3, the 2 foundations were able to re-ready themselves, and I started the loop. He didn't have any cards in hand, any protection. He had a god build of 6 foundations. So I was like, this is fine. This is perfectly balanced.
I mean, that is perfect. I was actually curious about how impactful History's Greatest and Master's Pride were, just because, you know, at their core, they're basically just one extra foundation. And I'm imagining that maybe that doesn't matter as much if you're just playing with so little 3 checks in your deck and sort of guaranteeing the check with City Rampage. But perfect example of like, if it was any 2 other foundations, you did not have that extra resources with those.
No, there was no chance I was gambling with that, and I probably would have just conceded the game afterwards or done the 4 mill just so that way I could empty another card from my hand, because Exterminate Mutant's biggest weakness is it doesn't have a block zone.
Mhm.
And cards with no block zones tend to be bricks while they're in your hands, but tend to be godsends in your hand during your turn. So outside of your turn, they're just bricks, and you really don't want them in your hand.
Yeah. And then I did have some like slight questions too about some of the foundations. You touched on them a bit, but like with Meeting Hanj, were you largely using it on your turn to dig, or using it defensively, or did it really just
primarily Meeting Hanj I use defensively, because often times I would actually discard a Resurrected Titan and a Foundation from my hand just to draw 3, so I had a bit better protection. But the other part is, if I did decide to fully build out, the discard 2 cards and then draw 2 cards, the discard 2 is after the cost of flipping the Foundation. So you don't have to have the 2 cards in your hand, you just draw 2. So it helped in that regards to ensure that I had some level of defense, even if I had no cards in hand, I fully built, or I have already played through 3 or 4 blocks, say turn 3, and need to refill so that I can continue with a bit of control. It worked really well as a defensive piece.
Yeah, playing your whole hand as aggressively as possible and drawing with it sounds awesome. And then I was a little curious with Pass Through Walls. So predominantly it was in here to interact with their assets, but did you also get to use its ability to cancel any breakers? Because I'd imagine there's a possibility the breaker could interrupt the Falling Titans loop if it's a small enough stage.
There were a couple of decks, and I'll point one out. One of them was a Hawks deck during the day, and they were running the Big Fist hands. I'm trying to remember the name of the attack, but
Big Fist Bash.
They often... Yeah, I think it was Big Fist Bash. And that's got Breaker 3 on it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So that was one of the other scary things for me, was people just saying, cool, Breaker 3, I've only got +2 to my check, flips a 3, I've got no active foundations, I now lose my turn.
Yeah.
So there were instances of that where I was scared, and that was my tech piece in to ensure that against heavy breaker chain decks with Kiko's Aid, Big Fist Bash, and a couple of other cards, and then just saying Breaker 6, it's like, actually, I'm just going to say it's Breaker 2, because I'm going to get rid of the biggest part of the breaker response. I didn't use it all that much through the tournament itself, but in playtest against that Hawks deck in particular, I did use it a couple of times just to say no.
Yeah. Nice. And then I guess I'm pretty sure this is my last question. I just wanted to confirm with the attack lineup. So when you would use Resurrected Titan or Emerge Victorious to tutor for Falling Titans, would you still be fine to go in on that turn, or would you wait? Because you're playing with that +1 progressive, it might matter, you know?
It'd depend. If you're going to try and go in that turn and you don't have a City Rampage, the 2 questions I'd be asking is, do you have enough foundations that you've built to at least play Falling Titans 5 times? If you do, and you're happy to safely cycle in with Mechazoid, going in, out, potentially drawing into a City Rampage, then it's safe enough to go for it. If you can't, because of certain other factors, or you realize that you're doing this to filter your hand and set yourself up for the next turn, like you've got 3 Exterminate Mutants, you've played 1 first form to mill 3, and then you're just going to poke so that way you can get the card into your hand for next turn. You maybe build a Meeting Hanj. meeting Hanj, just so that way you can cycle out that other exterminate mutants. It's all about gauging whether or not it's viable. I do know that one of the games during the day that I had to play was versing a it was round 5. It was Reiner. That's it. I was versing a Reiner deck, and I had to just string out and kill him. But he had enough tech pieces to remove my exterminate mutants. He realized that the target was that, not falling titans. So I had to actually string out with a resurrected into a falling titans, play falling titans twice, and then had to end on an emerge just to make sure that the check value could go through and actually deal enough damage. In that instance, I didn't actually get the combo off. It was just I had enough damage through playing those 4 attacks to kill Reiner at 17 health. It's about taking account of the opportunities you have, the state of the game, but realistically, you wouldn't necessarily poke. This deck isn't for poking. But if you have to, you can, but you have to understand what cards you have left in your deck, what cards you have in your hand, and what your opponent is. I think it's the biggest 3 parts you have to take into consideration.
Mm. Yeah, that's why the defense question is so difficult when I ask people, because there's so much going on. Like, you can have your straightforward combo that's plan A, but sometimes plan A is not always going to be what you have access to.
Yeah, it was the deck itself. As I said before, the biggest weakness is just, hi, here's a 10 damage, 10 speed attack coming at your face 5 times in a row. Sure, you can seal their unfazed, reduce progressive difficulty, stop them potentially drawing. But eventually that does actually kill the deck. Any raw big stats does hurt, which is why this deck has like a 60 or 70% win rate against Godzilla. Mimic is also another difficult one, because Mimic just has too many utility pieces and assets that, with only the one card that says no to assets, you really are on the back foot going forward. It's about who gets the control first and then who combos first. Is it Mimic or is it me?
Yeah, definitely a lot of... I think that's something that's very interesting about either aggressive decks or combo decks. That sort of that speed of the match, where you have your windows to do your thing before they do their thing, and you have to take your risks to hopefully accomplish your combo.
Yes. And you also have to hope that they flounder a little bit, or that with your runaway or filled with doubt that you've made them flounder, and they just can't continue with the string.
Mm-hmm. But with that, I believe I've asked all the questions I wanted to ask. So if you didn't have any more pieces about the deck you wanted to talk about, I usually ask any shout-outs you wanted to give.
I don't have any shout-outs, but I would like to say, UVS is probably my favorite game at the moment, with how diverse and how interactive it is. No 2 games are exactly the same, and I'm seriously enjoying the playstyle, so I'm looking forward to where it goes next. Hell
yeah, dude. No surprise, I really like Universus, so that is awesome to hear that. I always give a shout out with these, since recently the UVS Ultra account Metaversus just came out, where a player in the community has made it so that you can look at every deck list from every player in each competitive event from this year. And so that's what I've been using for this deck profile. You can also see every opponent that Kai played against and what they played, as well as look at their decks. It's super awesome if you love data. Highly recommend checking this out on UVS Ultra. But with that, this was Kai's Allura 10th place deck profile. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and have a good rest of your day, everybody.